So once again, guys, thanks for joining. This is Tariq, the content lead here at CXL. And today, I'm not by myself.
Hello everyone. Hello.
And today we're going to talk about AI, which is, I guess, not a surprise. But for the past few months at CXL, we've been doing lots of research on how AI is reshaping the role of a marketer. So we want to share some of our biggest findings with you, including how the marketing role is evolving, like what skills are becoming more valuable, and why we believe it's becoming more important to become an AI native marketer. I think the best place to start with this presentation is to answer one of the most important questions many people are probably asking, which is how is AI actually impacting the marketing job market? We analyzed more than 1,750 marketing job descriptions on LinkedIn during two periods, one in Jan and the other one was in May last month, to fully understand how AI is reshaping hiring expectations and marketing roles. And one of the biggest findings was this one. Around 37% of marketing job posting nowadays, they mention the word AI. Honestly, I expected this to be even higher, but it's still a significant number. And more importantly, it keeps growing fast. So, like I told you, we did this analysis two times, one in Jan and one in May. And back in Jan, when we analyzed these job descriptions, only 30% of job posting mentioned AI. And just a few months later, that number jumped to 37. And if we run this study later, I think this summer or at the end of the year, I bet that this number will keep increasing and keep increasing. But what's even more interesting is that companies are no longer just mentioning the AI as a buzzword. We also tracked mentions of specific AI tools and platforms, and those jumped from 5% to 15%. So companies now expect marketers to already have an AI tool stack, whether that's Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini and it. They want candidates who already know how to work with different AI tools. And of course, we have automation, which is something that's been trending a lot in the past few months, especially around building systems. So mentions of automation also increased from 13% in Jan to 21% in May, which tells us something important. Companies don't just want people who can use AI tools separately or in isolation. They want marketers who know how to connect tools together. They want marketers who know how to automate workflows and build scalable AI systems. So we're moving away from just simply prompting AI tools to actually building systems with it. And one interesting finding as well is regarding the seniority level during this job analysis. So basically, when it comes to AI mentions, the highest we thought that the highest focus would be on execution roles, but surprisingly, that was not the case. The strongest growth happened in leadership and managerial positions. So for director roles, AI mentions increased from 32% to 52%, or sorry, to 50%. That means that half of these job posting now reference in AI in one way or another. And when it comes to mid-senior roles, it also increased from 30% to 40%. While entry-level positions, I would say remain kind of flat around 25%. So people like nowadays recruiters are looking for people who can execute on AI tools, of course, but also people who can lead AI adoption across teams. So they want people who can create the strategy, evaluate the outputs, improve workflows, train teams, and help organizations scale AI effectively. So I would say if you're currently in a senior role or a managerial role, expectations for your role are becoming much higher around your ability to integrate AI in the way your team is currently working. And then finally, like the last bit of this research is this one. We looked at which marketing functions were getting the most intentions when it came to dimensions of AI. And the highest AI adoption showed up in growth roles, specifically paid media and performance marketing. There was a big increase from 32% to 63%. And that makes sense for me because when it comes to performance marketing, it involves lots of data analysis, lots of reporting, lots of experimentation, lots of repetitive work. This is something that AI can easily automate. So I'm not surprised that now in performance marketing, there's a higher demand to use AI tools. So I would say the biggest conclusion from this whole research is that companies now are moving away from hiring AI assisted marketer and they're focusing more on AI integrated and AI native marketers. And if you're wondering what's the difference between all three, this is exactly going to be our next slide. But before I go there, I'm going to actually ask Hesh a question because Hesh, you are in this director role and you do look for, opening maybe jobs at CXL marketing roles. So my questions for you, like if you want to open a new role and you're looking at candidates, like what kind of AI skills are you looking at? And does this research resonate with you? Like what the expectations from recruiters?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think the table stakes have changed a lot. I think everybody knows about the existence of AI and chat GPT and just like simple prompting and working with it on that copy paste window tab copy prompt kind of level. People are moving very far away from that being the base level at the moment. So I think when you're looking at new roles and people to fulfill those roles, like that for me would almost be a flag if that's the level that everybody's at, because I would see that as table stakes. Like seeing somebody that's being to develop their workflows beyond just attaching a chat-based LLM to it. That's what I would be looking for, especially because nowadays it's like everybody got used to prompting and actually these and they've learned that the LLMs can give you the prompt already. So if somebody's coming in and their extent of AI expertise goes to like I can craft a really good prompt or prompt engineering, I would probably start digging a little bit deeper into how they're actually looking at their workflows, how they're looking what to retire, and so on. So I think this move is happening, and I think the way people are talking about using AI is also changing a lot, especially in the last, let's say, 6 months. I would say what I've seen personally, at least, is there was a very big shift in the last 6 months, specifically once. I would say Claude Code and GitHub and this kind of use cases started becoming a lot more widespread, and N8N agents and agent workflows started becoming a lot more prominent. This shift started to accelerate. There was kind of this 18-month, 24-month after ChatGPT where things kind of stayed fairly steady-ish growing, and then in the last 6 months, it's accelerated a lot.
Right? And like all of these, I would say job descriptions, like they focus, of course, on execution skills, but you look also at something when it comes to the mindset, like, okay, how often are they learning about AI, experimenting with different tools? Is this something also that you would like in a candidate?
Yeah, of course. I think being able to assess how AI is being used, not just in execution, but like how do you actually rethink what you're doing with AI and with the availability of different tools. That's super important, because otherwise you're just making something that maybe is now broken faster, which maybe is not an ideal outcome. You know, if you have a broken workflow or let's redefine that, an out of date workflow, making that run faster isn't the target here. I think things have fundamentally changed recently, and I think that way of thinking and being able to process that this is actually what's happening to your role and to marketing generally, not just your role, but adjacent roles, roles above you, roles below you. I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I think also it's one of the differences between AI assisted, AI integrated, and an AI native marketer, which is going to be our next, I think, part in this presentation. What is the difference between the three? I would say the simplest way to differentiate between these three is this. An AI assisted marketer, they use AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini as helpers or as assistants. That's why it's called an AI assisted marketer. So they use these tools to assist them in certain tasks throughout their day. For example, they might use, I don't know, ChatGPT to brainstorm blog ideas. They might use AI to write a LinkedIn caption, summarize an article, or draft an email. But the key thing is that they are using these tools in isolation. So most of their workflow is still manual. AI is just helping in certain moments throughout the day, but it's not deeply integrated into how they operate. And even the way they prompt is usually kind of basic. They often have to re-explain every single time context. Whenever they have a new chat or they're starting a new task, they keep prompting and explaining the context over and over again. So that's why when you look at the job market, usually AI assisted marketers, they are seen as more replaceable, because if you only use AI as an assistant or as an helper, many people would argue eventually agents and certain automations can do lots of that work. So that's why when you look at the job market, yeah, AI assisted marketers are more looked as replaceable. However, we also have the AI integrated marketer. This marketer or this person, they have a much broader AI tool stack, and more importantly, they know how to connect these tools together. So they build workflows and they automate lots of parts of their process, and they understand how outputs from one tool to the other can transfer. So, for example, they might automate reporting. They might use AI to create a first draft for a blog and then send that draft on Slack for review and connect multiple tooling together. However, it is still kind of hybrid. AI handles certain tasks while humans also handle other tasks. So the workflow is partially automated but not fully autonomous. So there's lots of human elements still involved in this in their workflows. But their prompting is much more advanced than the AI assisted marketer. It's more structured. They know how to give context properly. They know how to create repeatable templates for their prompts, and they know how to get better outputs. And finally, we have the AI native marketer, which is, I think, the main keyword in this whole webinar. So, for an AI native marketer, they don't use just AI tools separately or in isolation because their whole marketing operation is designed around AI from day one. So, every single step of their workflow is fully automated and fully optimized using AI tools. So what they do, they design systems, and most importantly, they build agents. So they don't use lots of prompting, they just design agents to complete tasks on their behalf. So they build agents, scalable processes where these agents they handle a large part of the execution. So instead of manually asking ChatGPT to help with one task or to, I don't know, use another LLM to write a draft, they have agents doing the work for them and talking to each other. So one agent does the research. Then this research gets passed to another agent that writes the draft. Then another agent performs fact checking, quality assurance to make sure that the tone of voice is on point. Then another agent optimized this draft to make it more SEO optimized or GEO optimized. And then another agent published this whole content piece on WordPress or on any other website builder. So as you can see, the entire workflow from A to Z is kind of fully automated with, of course, human in the loop to make sure that the output is on point. So if you look at the job market, AI native marketers are, I would say, more in demand, and mostly they are the most future-proof, basically, because they are learning skills that many recruiters, many companies are looking for. So if you want to summarize the whole difference between the three, AI assisted, they use AI tools in isolation, AI integrated, they connect different tools together, and they automate part of the workflow, not the full workflow. And then you have an AI native marketer that builds systems that are fully automated and fully autonomous. And why is this important? Why is it important for you to, I don't know, learn more about AI to become an AI native marketer? Obviously, I mentioned lots of reasons already when it comes to the job market, but also it can help you execute more faster without burning out. Because now with AIs, with agents, you can run more tasks and save lots of time. I think before, running these, creating these agents, you had to, I don't know, waste lots of time prompting AI, validating its output, reprompting it and reprompting it, or also maybe waiting for assets from different team members, and that takes time. But now with agents, you can really execute quicker without burning out. Also, because agents are handling most of the execution, now you can focus more on the strategy part. Like, okay, what do they need to execute? You can think, you can also become more creative with the I don't know, the experiments they would like to run, depending, of course, on your marketing function, whether it's SEO or CRO or performance marketing. So now you have more time to focus on what really matters, which is what to execute, because agents now are doing the tough work for you and doing the dirty work. And as I mentioned now, when it comes to the job market, you can future-proof your career as AI adoption accelerates. Uh, Now, I have a question for you guys. We've been talking a lot about AI integrated, AI native, AI assisted. I have a poll. I'm going to go to Menti, and I would like to hear from you guys. What do you think at the moment? Where do you consider yourself? Are you an AI assisted marketer? Are you an AI integrated marketer or native? You can scan the QR code and just vote, or you can, if you're on your laptop, go to menti.com and just add the code you see right here. So menti.com and then add 81017282. I can see people voting. We have mostly AI assisted marketer, or actually it's 50-50, but zero. Whenever I mention something, someone votes and they change it. We have maybe one or two AI native marketers.
Yeah, sure. So just to answer the question here, so AI assisted would be just like using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever to assist your workflows. Integrated is when you're starting to fold in some workflow automations and but partially. And AI native is when you're building entire AI systems that are more autonomous, obviously with humans in the loop, but your workflows are designed with AI from day one. This is
Exactly.
for Marco, who just asked me to define the the categories
Nice.
again.
Now, looking at the result, yeah, we have mostly AI integrated marketers, then AI assisted, not far behind. And I think we have few AI native marketers. So there is a gap between, I would say, each type of marketer. So I have a follow-up question, guys. Like whether you are AI assisted or you are AI integrated, what's stopping you, you think, from learning more about AI and reaching the next level? So let's say you're AI assisted, what's stopping you from becoming AI integrated? If you are AI integrated, what's stopping you from reaching, AI native? So it's also important for us to understand some of the common blockers that can prevent you from really learning more about AI. It's same thing. You can scan the QR code. You can go to menti.com, add the code, and you can actually vote. It's an open question, so you can type anything you want, and we can see the most common answers on the screen.
Yeah, I think it can also show up as the next question on your first
Also, yeah,
when you submit the first question about which type of AI marketer you are. For me, it showed up as the second question.
cool.
Time, bandwidth, lack of training.
Yeah, no
Interesting.
surprise there with time. I think, yeah,
Yeah, it's been consistent the last, I think, well, since ChatGPT arrival, really, like time, bandwidth, resource allocation. These things have been such consistent theme across marketers throughout, to be honest. There's also a lack of training and understanding information showing up a lot. So semantically, a few of these are probably quite similar.
yeah, and also one recurring
Governance.
answer is like not knowing where to start. There are so many tools out there. You have N8N, you have Claude Code, you have, I don't know, if you're into creating content, Hexfield, Runway. So it's tough to understand what to automate, which tool to use. So like, yeah, totally
Yeah,
relatable, even for me.
I'm seeing a couple of interesting ones as well, like privacy and governance as well. Uh, Also an interesting one from us, the raw broadness, not everything can be automated yet. That's very true, especially in some situations more than others where like I've talked to a few CROs recently who are very focused on like the data bias and just like biases in general in the models and how they're processing data, where even though that you can use them in certain things, in some cases there is still like this data quality risk, let's say, which stops people, even though it's technically possible and maybe easy to do, stopping some people from doing it. And some things are simply unautomatable yet.
Yeah.
I think,
Another one I like, yeah, another one I like, I would love to learn more about. It's like scared of what an agent maybe does or is capable of. I'm not sure what they meant with this one, but
or what it
also,
is, even it took, honestly, I'll be honest, it took me a while to understand the difference between an agent and automations. Like I've been automating stuff on Make and Zapier since I even knew what ChatGPT was, and then so when this agent terminology came out, it did take me a minute to be like, how is this different? So like I do get that hesitation. Or I for sure had that maybe in that shape. So I can understand where some of these things are coming from. All right.
cool. Thanks everyone for sharing your answers. Like we also surveyed lots of B2B marketers to answer the same questions. And I think now we're going to run you through some of the data and insights that we've gathered.
We've surveyed a lot of B2B marketers in the last few months specifically, just to see like what the landscape is and what people are saying in terms of AI, the skills that are needed, how the landscape is actually shifting. So just wanted to share some stuff that builds on what Tarek has already been saying in this webinar. First of all, that we've noticed that the landscape of marketing titles is changing. Like the titles are actually becoming obsolete. There's a vertical compression and a horizontal compression where your seniority is blending into roles below and above, and also disciplines across you, like whether you're SEO, CRO, or paid ad specialist, you're starting to see people shift into adjacent and more horizontal roles as well, because AI is giving you the capability to learn more and do more. So that really is change is a big change that we're seeing. And what you ship without others is really becoming more important. And what you ship without others is now what matters. There's more scope, there's less support, and there is an unclear path forward, though. Operational efficiency has entered the top three marketing priorities for a lot of B2B leaders, which is causing some concern, obviously. That's why we're also starting to talk about what's happening in the job market, how to protect your role, how to learn better. One marketer with AI is now expected to cover what used to require a team, actually, which is something that we've noticed a lot of leaders are saying. It's like, we wanted to dig more into that. I'll follow that up in the next slide with a little bit more of a breakdown about what these things mean, because there really is no benchmark and there's no defined path to change that. These things are happening as time progresses. And nobody really took the time or the effort to really look into it more. So we tried to do that for you and break this down. So what we noticed is that 60% of B2B leaders are cutting roles below them. I'll follow that up with a further breakdown in the next slide. Like I said, one marketer with AI is now expected to cover the work of three specialists. So just to be a bit more precise about that number, 72% of leaders are under extreme pressure to show short-term results. This is also what's causing a lot of this pressure, this anxiety, this AI FOMO. Okay, that this is definitely something that's leading to a lot of marketers feeling burnt out. Being burnt out is the number one top pain point for a lot of marketers. There's also a 50% fall in agency budget. So if you work in an agency, you might be feeling some pressure. Also, if you're working in-house hiring agencies, there might be more pressure in terms of output, in terms of results. And in the background, the budgets for automations and AI is slowly rising as well, to quite significant numbers. We dug a little bit more into that just to give you a little bit more context about what some of these numbers mean. 47% of companies eliminated, reduced, or stopped backfilling roles. This happened kind of quietly. So in the last 12 months, like a lot of these roles, just instead of hiring for somebody that has left, people just stop posting the job advert. It's not like people are getting sacked actively all the time. There's a big percentage of that where this is kind of happening in the background and it's just going out through attrition, right? And a lot of people still think that their role is safe, but many people identified that content roles specifically are vulnerable. Junior and entry level positions are disappearing specifically in these roles, right? So that can put a lot of pressure onto some people. Content, as you'll find out in a bit later with some more research that we've done, and probably from ChatGPT days onwards, was the very beginning of the AI adoption curve. So that's why content specifically is feeling it a lot more. It's the entry point to a lot of marketers to use AI, right? So another thing that we saw is 53% of B2B marketing leaders are saying that they haven't actually got any ROI out of their investment, which obviously is problematic. Maybe they're applying it in the wrong areas. They're looking at, execution, uh, putting adoption or AI adoption there, rather than starting to rethink the workflows and the systems that they're using, right? And a lot of mid-market and enterprise companies are actually, like we saw in the polls, are struggling a little bit with governance and privacy. So we're seeing a lot of people starting to use personal accounts for that to kind of sidestep this issue. And the last thing is 30% of B2B companies actually admit that their AI marketing messages is 3 to 6 months ahead of time. Like they're over-promising what they can deliver with AI. So there's a lot of talk, probably see that a lot on LinkedIn as well, where you see uh, people talking about workflows and tactics that are delivering insane results. When you see this kind of stuff, we really highly recommend that you start looking a little bit more into the data behind it. Like have these tactics and claims been backed up? If they have, what kind of percentages are they using? What kind of metrics are they using? Are they showing absolute numbers or percentages? Where are these numbers coming from? Are they being segmented in a way that maybe biases how you're reading the data? Anybody else reporting using the same tactic or similar? Like that's a very like, in this day and age, it's very, very, very difficult to be unique. If somebody's doing something, I'm 95% sure you can very quickly find somebody else in the market that's doing something very similar. And that will start to point towards whether there's validity in these claims or not. So do your research and don't just take the claims as presented. And that also goes for when you're buying a tool or a product that is highlighting the AI capabilities. Depending on the cost, some of this stuff you may be able to trial or go through a proof of concept period, but just do your due diligence before believing what you hear. As mentioned before, bandwidth is the number one pain point for many marketers. This graph is actually inspired by Kieran Flanagan from HubSpot's U-curve of AI adoption chart, which I found really, really interesting. Is talking about how when you start adopting AI, actually your productivity dips a little bit as you get used to the tools, as changes come in the market. This might not even be so linear, it might be a loop as changes keep happening. But I found this chart explains what's happening really quite well. When you're starting to learn about using AI, starting to adopt AI, actually, it costs you time, right? Learning what an agent is, learning how to use N8N, how to set up a GitHub repo if you've never even seen one before. It used to belong just to developers, right? Now it's entering the marketing discipline quite aggressively and very fast. Learning this stuff does take time. At some point, you reach your current productivity level, then it starts to accelerate. So I found this chart really, really useful, and it helped me understand a lot of some of the logic behind that and why people are feeling this FOMO and the fact that bandwidth is still the number one pain point. I think for the last 2 years running, whenever we've run this type of survey, it's really fascinating to see. Also, when we dug a little bit deeper, we found out that a lot of people are finding that smaller teams and missing specialists, that these roles that are being never backfilled, this is actually reducing the output and quality, and that they're falling behind to peers who are rebuilding faster. Like some people are just reacting faster than others, right? And also, some people are just starting to feel irrelevant as discipline and boundaries blur, right? Like this is, again, happening vertically and horizontally. When we dug into the exact skills of what B2B marketers are doing with AI right now, as mentioned and probably predictable, that content production and copywriting is by far leading. It's like above 70% across hundreds of marketers. Research and synthesis comes next, summarization. These two use cases are obviously quite widespread. Ideation and brainstorm as well. People are starting to become a lot more familiar with brainstorming with AI. AI is starting to change some of the ideas and opportunity paths available to you now. I think there's still this feeling of bias and let's say hesitation with some people because when you're ideating and brainstorming with AI, like it's important to be able to push it and prompt it in the right direction so you can get more out of it. If you're relying purely on just the ideas that AI presents to you and not doing any strategic or creative work yourself, you might be led down to a path that is very predictable or at least homogenous with what other people are getting, right? I'm sure some of you have experienced that as well when you're working with AI. Things can feel repetitive till you start injecting the human, that strategic input. You'll start to get the same kind of responses back. Custom agents or GPTs are just under a third of people playing with it, just above quarter, between a quarter and third. Performance and data analysis, like at a basic level, yes, but at a more advanced level, where people are stitching together large amounts of data, that's actually quite starting to go below one-fifth of people. And workflow automation is very surprisingly little amongst hundreds of marketers. So that was for us very surprising. I thought it would be a lot more. When you look at this from what people most want, it starts to flip, right? Of course, naturally, building agents is by far leading in the front. Reliable data analysis. I mentioned this point a couple of points already, how people have this doubt about the quality of the output and data hallucinations and so on. This has become very, very important for people, as well as better brand voice and having less generic outputs. People have gone It's started to move significantly to more advanced levels. You've gone from just putting a tone of voice stock, attaching it to your prompt, or telling it what to do, to having projects or custom GPTs with brand voice stocks and tone of voice and style guides and whatever, to entire repositories and even separate applications that have all the documentation about this and examples. So it's starting to get really, really sophisticated with loops and agents checking the work as it's happening. So like the system thinking here is starting to get to really, really advanced levels to control this. But a lot of people haven't reached that yet. So they're still struggling with this better brand voice and reliable data problems, which makes sense when you look at it in terms of automated workflows. People are having still quite a lot of issues with starting to think about how to build these systems, both in terms of architecture and automations, which comes to connecting AI tools as well. That was going back a step. There we go. So we started to look at these things together and where the real skill gaps are, like what people think is important and their average skill level. And what we noticed is that between uh, building AI systems and processes, how people know that it's really important, but the average skill is actually very low. And it's the same with redesigning marketing workflows. That's like the second there, using AI for research, running experiments and performance, and creating campaigns and content. You start seeing slightly better differential between how important people think it is and their skill level. Like, for example, creating campaigns and content, it's still very important, but people's skill levels in it are quite high because it's it was very, very clear to people how to do that at the beginning with chat GPT and chat-based LLMs. Like the AI adoption there is much more advanced than, let's say, building AI systems. This is a different representation of the same data. It's a little bit clearer to see where people green to red or to pink is beginner to advanced, and you can see it diagonally running across from creating content. The amount of people that see themselves as advanced is actually very high, and people seeing themselves as beginner in building AI systems and with no skills at all is actually the most dominant part across 80 respondents here. So you can see that when you start to slice this data, where the skill gaps and the importance of things really matter. And I think it's important for us to address that both in terms of how we're using AI and what to learn and what to do and focus on next. We dug a little bit more into this. So when we started looking at production and content, we noticed that the B2B leaders actually wanted, a lot of them wanted to get the content engine fully off their plate. And 42% are still saying generic sounding AI output is their top content failure, even though people have been using tone of voice stocks and everything for a while now. But as things get advanced, the system needs to be more sophisticated. B2B marketers themselves, they want to brief, produce, and distribute without a writer, a designer, or a specialist. We're seeing um, outsourcing of work to freelancers diminish. Most marketers are still just drafting faster, though. So this system thinking is still not present inside content. Turning one brief into ads, landing pages, and campaign assets, repurposing is, of course, being done at a prompt level, but having a system that generates all these things from one brief, that system thinking is still not present. There's also, of course, AEO, GEO, SEO, however your viewpoint is on that Capturing the zero-click behavior in LLM citations is, of course, super important. Organic traffic for a lot of people has been very hard to predict and hard to read. A lot is happening on that front. So that's very, very in demand skill. People really want to be able to capture that traffic from, well, not even traffic impressions or brand mental availability. They want to be able to be present in the zero-click world. Building brand context that makes AI right in your voice and not against it. Like mentioned before, this is skill is becoming very, very, very prominent as a pain point because people are still not able to get it to do it consistently. I've struggled with this myself with even inside more complicated systems. Like, for example, the M dash. Everybody knows the M dash is kind of the hallmark of AI writing, right? Getting an AI to stamp that out regularly is surprisingly difficult. You have to structure your repositories and system in a way that always pushes this kind of critical, non-breaking rules to the top of the context. AI works with a context window, right? So, for example, some people are recommending don't have context files longer than 200 lines in an MD file, or a tone of voice stock can only be 5,000 words, or whatever, right? This is coming from this making sure to have these rules, the most important rules for your brand context, always pushed into the context window for the AI. That requires building a much more sophisticated system. When we started looking at research, uh, we know that 42% of B2B marketers already use AI for research, but a lot of them are still copy pasting between tabs. They don't have this automated loop, right? People want to find the signal, check it, and then act on it without anything in between. Mining reviews, communities, and sales calls to surface these pains, finding exactly what your ICP wants, finding these signals and trends is becoming really, really important. And of course, verifying it, fact checking this stuff before actually putting this stuff into campaigns, into briefs, into messaging. It's very, very important to verify this stuff. There are ways of doing that. You can build quality checks. Actually, a really good piece of advice I heard from Ryan Law, or not heard, read it online in LinkedIn. He was talking about mimicking the human workflow with AI and how it's important to not wait till the end to verify the output, but actually inject humans step by step into the process. It's much harder to control the output if you wait till the end because the way AI works, it gets very complicated to correct it at the end when you're like, how many steps did the AI take before human intervention? Actually, inserting the human into steps along the way is a much more effective way of doing that. It's not even a new concept, let's say, when you're working with developers and stuff like this. We used to call it the big reveal or the elephant carpaccio, right? When it comes to development, where you have this big project, you're building an entire feature that is a 6 month long project. How do you slice down that elephant and present it to people in little slices so you can correct along the way, course correcting? That's a very important way of thinking about these projects, and I think a really good way of thinking about how to work with AI when it comes to brand tone of voice and data quality. In the end, you want to build always on pipelines, and if you can't get that quality and that trust in AI, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually deliver anything of value. People are also looking at workflow redesign. 55% of B2B marketers, like we showed you earlier, still see themselves as beginners, whether they have no skills or just a little amount of skills. And only 10% actually know that this is a very important skill. They're still using AI and expecting these things to happen, but not a lot of people are starting to think, oh, actually, I really need to change my entire workflow, not just add AI to it. Like I need to actually kind of rip up the playbook and start from scratch. That workflow redesign it's a very, very big gap to people's understanding of where we are now and what's happening next. People want to be able to audit what they're doing, retire it, keep it or rebuild it around AI. It's very important to look at all your workflows, all your tasks, and be able to make that distinction. It's also really important to design where to put the inputs and outputs, like I mentioned in the previous one. Where to put the human review checkpoints, designing these entry points is becoming super, super important. The last skill here is building custom agents to actually run some of these workflows for you. So I think that's very important actually. And building these custom agents is a skill a lot of people don't have yet. Like we saw in Nepal, a lot of people are struggling with definitions, technical definitions, actual implementation of these things.
I think someone mentioned, which is also very important that everybody in the organization use the same system. What I'm noticing is when teams or separate individuals build their own systems, at the end of the day, there's a lot of risks for brand or product to be very inconsistent. Like this is so accurate because if you're using your own private ChatGPT account or you're building your own Claude system account, you're training it differently maybe from your peers. So obviously there's gonna be lots of inconsistency with the tone of voice with the output being produced. So that's why this is the last skill that Hash is going to talk about, which is operation and AI system, which is to encourage everyone within the team to use the same system and build the same agents and use it as well.
Exactly. And thanks for bearing with me here. So this is one step up, one layer up from workflow. When you're talking about workflows, the distinction between a workflow and an AI system, a workflow is a process that you're doing to execute a specific task. A system is more overarching than that. It's layering all these workflows together, right? And how to connect them together, the connection between that and different tool sets, different roles in the company, different governance layers, and different tools in your stack, right? So 42% of marketers they're saying this is their most important skill, and a very big piece of them rate themselves as a beginner, a much bigger proportion than in workflow redesign. An individual AI actually hits a really strong ceiling here, and AI systems enable others in your other members in your team to actually run with these systems. They can then enable themselves to build workflows around these tools, around these systems. How, like for example, if you set up the system properly, somebody can come into your team and they can run with the content operation faster without having to rethink or rebuild the system around or the workflow around content production, data quality, brand voice. So being able to enable others and building a system that others can run with, not just external team members, maybe even clients or other people that you work with, that they can actually interface with what you've built very well. So building and governing this kind of system, whether you call it a prompt library, a repository, connecting it via MCP or Claude, building and governing these things is a very highly wished for skill at the moment, as well as creating approval flows for ads, copy, and so on, because people still, like I said, that if 40%, 40 to 50% are uh, questioning the data quality and brand tone of voice, people still want to be involved in the approval flows just so there's accountability and there's a quality review. I see somebody here is raising their hand. Is that intentional for a question or not?
Like, make sure to type the question in the chat just in case you have it.
I want to make sure to answer any questions if people have, so that's why I took a little pause. So yeah, defining AI native operations and being able to benchmark that is obviously really important because, as mentioned earlier, a lot of people, around half, are not seeing an ROI on their AI investment. So that's something I think critical because people, without measuring the impact of these things, how can you know if it's working or not? How are you to know whether to iterate on that process or workflow? Is this content performing better? Are the that we've automated performing better or not? Is the team running faster? Are they more enabled? All of these things need to be benchmarked so you can actually start to see ROI. Otherwise, we're in guesswork territory, which can be very dangerous for a business. The last part of this webinar, I want to zoom out a little bit and look at the context of some people that have inspired me a little bit in how to think about AI native marketing and some of the thinking out there. The first, I've mentioned him a few times already, is Kieran Flanagan from HubSpot. This guy's great, really. Just follow him on LinkedIn. He also has a really good Substack. follow him. This is a chart that he laid out explaining what an agentic marketing org could look like, right? And I'll just explain it for you clearly. There's four layers to it, with the bottom being the most AI heavy, right? And as you go up to leadership, orchestration, it starts to get more human. So at the very bottom, where you have the context layer, right? So this is what the AI engines and this is what the AI engine reads from, right? So the intelligence, the operating system, the memory, and so on. And this is where like a strategist or humans could enter and they can create the strategy for how this stuff works. But really, it's an AI operation. There's a lot of agentic and AI work here because this context layer is something that's happening passively in the background. Then you get this execution layer where there's like content, ads, campaigns, research. And there's still a lot of human involvement here, but there's a very big part of this that is still being done by AI. As you're going up to orchestration, the humans get more involved, right? And especially at leadership, where of course it's mostly humans still. Like I'm not sure anybody has reached the the point where they're like, okay, let's let AI run our strategy for us. So I think for now, at least, that's how this model is presented. I would argue that there's probably a QA layer in here somewhere. So if I'm looking at how to iterate on this, I would probably inject the QA piece somewhere that's more clearly defined. Because based on our research, people are still having this huge doubt and trust issues. And I think that stops a lot of people from A, using AI more often or adopting it and integrating it more into their work because they're seeing uh, some things which are causing concern, right? Whether that's red flags in data, hallucinations, like these things can stop you at that execution layer where you're like, okay, why should I integrate this? This might cause more problems down the line because they haven't learned the skill to remedy that just yet, right? Uh, we also talked about this as well. John Miller from Marketo, he's also talking about how people have just invested in the wrong areas of AI, and instead of looking at content generation and personal productivity, people should start investing more into the orchestration, context, and workflow layers. Again, we're seeing other people starting to see the same thing as us here. Um, Yeah, mentioned this also earlier. Like, what the last thing that we want is faster execution of on top of unreliable context. This speeding up of a broken engine is the last thing we want to avoid. 53% of people say their marketing investment hasn't delivered ROI. So that's very, very important to remember. And the differences from Flanagan's model here is that Miller is really talking about budget and priority rather than how to build the system. He's really looking at it more in terms of budget and misallocation of resources. So if you had to prioritize which skill to learn first and you're lacking in one of these, you can also look at it like that as well. Olga Andrienko she used to work at SEMrush and now is CMO at Fox 3. She's also making this argument that marketing ops folk are uniquely positioned to build these systems, right? So again, this stress on AI systems, AI native marketing, like what is that? It's starting to look more at the workflow and AI system level, right? It's a structural thing. It's not a tooling upgrade. It's not injecting ChatGPT nodes into one workflow. It's not using a chat window. It's really like overhauling your structure. Also seen I think Backbase are also doing it as well, where they ripped up their entire go-to-market engine. They didn't just bring Claude Code and think, okay, how can we put this into our system with GitHub? They're like, okay, like what does our go-to-market function look like with this tooling? And structurally change everything that they're doing to accelerate their entire go-to-market operations, right? We don't want to add agents and tools on existing ops structures. We really want to rebuild them from scratch. Again, the difference here is that she's talking about uh, like marketing ops as the answer to a lot of this restructuring. And it's not a competing model. It's more role assignment and clarification. It builds on Flanagan's model a little bit. Again, it's like seeing the rise of marketing ops in this supporting function to the AI system. Like before, it used to be more of a background task, and now it's entering really like a lot of people that have this training maybe might become suddenly a lot more useful. So if you have a lot of marketing ops background, suddenly you might rise to the front. Matthew Sweezy, this is an interesting take because this is talking about it not from a building perspective, but as a brand. How do you live? What is an AI native brand here? So he's talking about developing your brand in a way that is callable by AI. The customer journey is being impacted a lot by AI at the moment. It's handling it in terms like even now when I'm looking for a product, I'm in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. Usually whichever tab is open, I don't. It's got to the point for me where I'm looking at some product and I have a few of these open. I'm just using it to brief myself on the tool, to compare it, to dig more into specific features or whatever. How do you then get your brand to become native to this journey? Right? And how do you structure everything that you're doing so that agents and LLMs can interface with your brand, uh, not just in terms of website architecture, but in terms of the content you're writing, repetition of important key points, and data accuracy, creating, I think, what Steve taught in one of our courses called a truth framework, and actually having a brand that is callable. An AI native brand is something. It's something that you also have to think about when you're thinking about AI native marketing. It's not just the execution part, but how do you actually market your product in a way that is AI native? Again, this is very different from the model I first showed because it's talking about the external face of marketing, not the internal ops layer. They're not competing, they're very much complementary. So these things, have a look around, start to think a little bit about what that means for you in terms of what skills you want to learn next. And with that, I think that's the end of the research that we've done and things that we found quite interesting. All right. Thank you all.
So we've made an assessment that you can take right after this webinar to help you understand what level of AI native marketer you are. So all of the skill areas that Hash mentioned in the past few minutes, like you're gonna get some questions around those, and based on your answers at the end, you will get a score, and you can see if you are an AI assisted marketer, integrated or native for each skill area, and also some possible next steps. We're gonna share the link of the quiz with you guys in the chat. Feel free to take it just to understand where you are at the moment. And just as a small incentive for you guys, I don't want to spoil too much, but we might be building a program to address these five skill areas to help you bridge the gap between being an AI assisted to an AI native marketer. So if you fill this quiz, you might get some, updates, exclusive updates, and maybe even early access. Just an incentive to help you, yeah, fill this in. What are some examples of platforms that you can build agents with? I think you have N8N, you have Claude. I think these are the most popular ones, at least, and the ones I've been using personally. Um, there's lots of so many best practices around how to build agents there. So I think it's a good starting point if you want to build agents.
Yeah,
The cool thing about, yeah, sorry, Hash, go for it.
yeah, I was going to say also if you don't know some of these tools, like what we just recently did an offsite and it was it was quite fun actually to see people that have never used N8N or Make or anything like this before, how quickly they can learn. I think we did like a 2 hour hackathon where we got the team together and people that have never used it before. And we're just like, well, here's N8N. And at first people were like, oh my God, what do I do? But actually you can prompt your way to something workable that quite quickly, actually. So if you think of something that's quite small in scope, you can use Claude or ChatGPT to help you structure a prompt for N8N, and then that will get you very quickly something at least to look at where you can start understanding how it's working. You can run the workflow, it will run into some errors, you start troubleshooting. You know, it's very actually it's a lot more accessible than it looks to play around with this stuff. And N8N also has a 14-day trial, I think it is. So I would
Yeah.
recommend starting there because also visually, I think it's quite clear once it prints a workflow, what's happening. Claude, everything's happening a bit more in the background. So if you're more familiar with it and you go to Claude and you go into the code tab or you're doing it in VS Studio or something, when you're building an agent, things are happening more in the background. So it's not really visualized for you the steps it's taken. And 8N is very good at you're able to see exactly what's happening might be a little bit overwhelming at the beginning if you're non-technical when things are being parsed and all of this. But after a few runs of troubleshooting, the terminology starts to become more familiar and so on. And I see a few questions here on examples of agents and workflows. So I mentioned a couple of people already. I want to go to Ryan Law and Ahrefs. There's a blog which let me see if I can link it quickly. Um, I'll explain it first, then I'll find the link. They rebuilt their entire content operations using Claude and Claude Code and VS Studio and a I'm not sure about VS Studio, Claude Code and a GitHub repository. So they built I think 23 skills or something. And I mentioned it as well earlier. They've mimicked the human workflow. So they looked at their workflow and be like, what is it actually that we're doing to publish blogs? Right? And they've mimicked that workflow, created a skill for each thing that's happening. And what I found really, really um, interesting in their approach is that they didn't design this to produce more blogs. They just wanted to take the burden and bandwidth and improve their bandwidth with it, right? I found that really, really like commendable that they're not like, whoa, we can produce like 20 blogs a day. It's not about volume. They just wanted to do what they're doing better in a more efficient way and taking some of the pain away. So that's a really, really good example of somebody doing this and actually approaching it in the right way. I highly recommend you follow Ryan Law and Ahrefs folk as well. They're doing some good stuff there.
There was one question that was, I was thinking, hidden in the mix, which is what metrics are you using to measure AI adoption?
That's a good question. I think it's important to look at like well, token use is one actually. Like we've been depending on how you structure your accounts, let's say you can look at something like Claude and look at token usage. And what we've seen specifically is that since this workshop specifically that I mentioned, the rate of token usage has gone incredible, like it's exponential. So that's one early one. I think when it comes to actual, let's say, productivity and efficiency, the only real measurement here is time. And then you have some quality metrics as well, right? So I would look at, it depends on the workflow. There's no one uniform answer here because it really depends on the workflow. Like if we're looking at content specifically, let's say a blog, it's the time to publish, the amount of coverage that we're getting. These can be things that you're already measuring, and you can look at the impact of that and how that's happening over time. And also the quality of that is going to move some leading metrics. Like we try and work with leading metrics usually. Things like traffic and revenue are often lagging. So for us, it's like how many blogs are we producing per week, or how much time is going into that? How much money are we spending into each unit? Unit economics is also a very good way, and that changes very much across workflows.
I see there's lots of questions coming in. If you want, guys, because I think now like the 1 hour mark for the webinar is done, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn, add Hash on LinkedIn. If you have any more questions about any of the research, we're more than happy to continue the conversation over there because I think it's gonna be tough to keep up with the questions. So feel free to add us, and we're happy to answer any more questions you guys might have.
Thank you so
Uh,
much.
Thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, see you in the next webinar. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.